So hello from Green-Mopeds in southwest London. So today we are riding out on this Yadea G5. Okay, so this is, as the name suggests, from Yadea, although it's imported into the UK by Lexmoto, a name which you should all be familiar with, I guess. Lexmoto are importing 3 electric bikes from Yadea, and Yadea itself, out of China, they have probably nearly 30 electric bikes. They've been around for a long time, 20 years. They say that they export to 75 odd countries, or territories, or cities, regions. And they say they do 6 million units a year. They do more than just motorcycles and mopeds, though, I will tell you that. They do tricycles, so electric tricycles, some lead acid stuff still. They do push bikes, they do kick scooters. So 6 million is including all of that. But to give you an example of how big they actually are, their revenues are about $3 billion a year, okay, for all of those things. NIU's revenue is about 350 million, so you can see how big a company they are. Okay, the other bikes we'll talk about another time, but on the G5 there are actually there's actually 3 models, 3 different variations, but in the UK we're just getting this one. If you look on the global Yadea website, you will see something called a G5 City, which this is, but they call it the G5 here. This is a 28 mile an hour bike. As you can see, I'm flat out at 29. So it's an L1E, or moped category, 50cc, whatever you want to call it. So it can be ridden on a moped license, or a pre-2001 driver's license, or CVT, L plates, etc. Okay, the G5 Pro, which we might get, maybe, that is more like a dual battery, 45 mile an hour bike, high rated batteries, high rated motor. You can't really talk about this bike and not compare it to its direct competitor, which is the NQi Sport from NIU. In most things it is comparable, but the differences are, hopefully, will become apparent when we talk through it. So yeah, the G5 City, the G5 Pro is, as I said, comparable to maybe an NQi GTS Sport. But this one is 2.3 kilowatts max. The NQi Sport is 2.3 kilowatts max. This has 12-inch wheels, NQi Sport, 12-inch wheels. What is different is the feeling of space for your legs, especially if you are taller. So I'm 6'1", 1m85. They have made a flat seat, which I keep mentioning on NIU reviews. Flat seats mean that I can sit where I want, and I don't have to worry so much about the handlebars hitting my knees. As you can see, not really a problem there. They've also put a decent kink in the seat, in the handlebars, which helps. So no issues about hitting my knees on the handlebars, no matter what I'm doing. This is a 2-seater, so it does have rear pegs that come out for the passenger. It also comes by default with a backrest, which would be an extra option on an NIU, unless you put a top box on it with a pad, I guess, which you can do on this bike. It has a rack. Okay. Other design things about it. It is, again, pretty comparable to an NIU NQi. In dimensions, it's 1m81. The NQi is 1m80. So 6 foot long, if you want to put it in that sort of terms. It doesn't have this halo light at the front like an NIu, but it does have 3 separate lights along the bottom square. We will make that more obvious when we do the static review, which we'll get onto at some point. It's got some rather nice rear lights. It's got the Yadea logo, which is a running light at the back. It does have to be enabled. It doesn't come enabled by default, but we do enable it. And as you can see from the screen, it's you can't say that it's not clear to read. I mean, you know, the only thing I guess it should do or could do is give you the range. So range on this bike is quoted at well, depending on whose marketing you read, I guess it's quoted at something like 60 odd kilometers. Let's say that's 50 in reality. 50 makes it sort of 30-35. The battery is Panasonic cells, and the battery weighs about 8.5 kilograms, and it's under the floor like an NIu, but it is smaller. An NIu NQi Sport battery is 10 kilos, and subsequently more cells in it, and subsequently the NIu has more range. We've talked about this so many times that if you want range, NIu is probably the one to go for most of the time. But if you want sort of power and speed, you're more likely to pick something else. But in this particular comparison, obviously, it's the same because they're both 2.3 kilowatts. So I'd say I think this feels a bit more sprightly off the mark. Although it probably shouldn't, because the battery on this is 26 amp hours, which is another reason for less range. The NQi Sport is 29 amp hours, so that would probably explain the range. But it is 85 kilos with the battery in it, whereas that's about 10 kilos less than an NQi Sport. So power to weight ratio, technically speaking, is better in this bike, because it is 10 kilos less with the same power. Okay, as you can see, it's comfortably cruising around. It does have only 2 modes, and I would probably say that, like most bikes actually, you probably wouldn't bother with mode 1, or eco as they call it on this bike. The reason being is that it gets you to 15 miles an hour, and it's rare that you want to go a maximum speed of 15 miles an hour unless you are stuck in traffic or filtering maybe. Obviously it's all about saving energy, therefore getting range. Talking about saving energy, I don't notice regen. It might not have regen. We've talked about this before. Even if it did, you're going to get 5% back from a 30-35 mile range battery. So you're talking about 1.5 miles, right? So regen isn't necessarily going to be, or the lack of regen isn't necessarily going to be the reason to not choose this bike or choose someone else that does. 1 mile more isn't necessarily going to make the difference, unless of course you need that mile to get home. So you can see lots of room. There's a bag hook, as you can see, little storage space for your phone and bits and pieces. I guess one of the things that you might consider for this bike over an NIu is the way they've designed the underseat storage. So an NIu NQi has, or any of the N series that only has 1 battery or is running with 1 battery, has 19 litres of space. I think they might try and show that with a helmet under the seat, but it's not really true. You can't get a helmet in 19 litres. This one's got 26, so that should be enough. They say for a full face helmet, but you would definitely get an open face helmet in this, which obviously you couldn't on a 19 litre storage space. Okay, so that is an advantage, and I do like the flat seat, as I've always mentioned, because it just gives you more flexibility in terms of where you're going to sit. Seat height is about the same because the wheels are the same size, as I said, 12-inch wheels. It does have front and rear discs, as you can see by these things on the handlebars. So you can go to Halfords or something and top this bike up with the .3 or .4 oil yourself if you wanted to. Although of course you should be going to a official NIU service or dealer to do that. But this is one of the advantages of electric bikes without the motor, or without the petrol motor. Maintenance does sort of become things like that, and brakes and stuff like that. Okay. It has a 4-amp charger, and it looks remarkably like the same case as an NIU charger. It's probably come from the same place, although they do put on their charger that it's not their brand, it's someone else, Power something. I'm just trying to remind myself if there is a phone socket here. Yes, there is. So USB charging point next to the ignition there. It does have an alarm built in, so again fairly similar. In terms of colours, there are actually 5 colours from Yadea. Blue, white, red, black, and this sort of matte grey, which you probably can't see here, but it is matte grey. Unfortunately, the UK is only getting the black and the grey. Again, that's I guess Lex Moto's choice. You might just hear the indicators, so it has got indicator noise, which is good. I always prefer that. As you can see, the indicators are quite high up here. Okay, so when we put this together, you do actually have to navigate through setting all that bit up. But yeah, so they're fairly high up, so they give you shouldn't miss them. I guess one of the things that sort of summarises this bike is, considering you're losing, let's say you're losing 10 miles in range over an NIU, you're actually spending though £574 less, and it's on the grant, so that is after grant. So an NIU NQi is 2476, and this is £1,900 after the grant. So that might help some of you who want to get this on a budget, or get into these sorts of bikes on a budget. You will be able to actually get this on 3 months interest-free credit through our partnership with PayPal, if that also is of use. So it has the 2-year warranty on the bike and the 3-year warranty on the battery because of the requirements of OLEV. Okay, so all good there as well. Okay, this bike isn't actually new. Just to finish off, this bike was actually announced at 2018 at ECMA, so it's not something that has just been conjured up to compete with NIU. It has been around for a while now. Okay, so overall, fairly lightweight, flexible on the storage, as powerful as an NQi, but cheaper by £500. It's also cheaper than a UQi GT Pro, although that's sort of a different setup altogether. No storage on that, a higher seat height because it's got 14-inch wheels. So all in all, other than say the 10-mile range, you're looking at a similar bike to an NQi Sport, but for 500 quid less. I guess one thing to say is it does have an app, although it probably isn't as good as the NIU app. Whether you buy a bike because of the app, I guess it's debatable. I think I covered everything. Charging time, about the same, 6 to 7 hours as usual. And that's about it. So you're obviously welcome for a test ride. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at hello@green-mopeds.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll see when the static review and other reviews come out, and hopefully you found that of use. So thanks very much.